Welcome everyone to this month's Gifting Back to the Community Health Education class. I'm so glad that you are here joining today. This is a topic that I get really excited about because I see it so often. So let me introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. My name is Allison Ubanik, and I am board certified in holistic nutrition. And my journey kind of began because both of my parents had Alzheimer's disease. And I'll just be honest, I was really fearful for my own brain health and what that looked like for my family going on in the future. So I went back to school to get educated, and that's where I got that board certification in holistic nutrition. And I'm also an Amen Clinic's brain health professional. And the one piece that just kept coming back around and coming back around over and over again was how gut health was so important to our brain health. And so that really gave me a lot of hope for my future and what that looked like. And so in that journey, what that led me to do was really start working with midlifers, people that really feel like just exhausted, and they may be swimming in brain fog or have all kinds of GI distress issues, things like gas, bloating, indigestion, unreliable, unpredictable bowels, all that kind of stuff. And taking that knowledge that I learned and, helping them get their energy back and have proper digestion and clear thinking and doing all that without the use of medications. And I've just been so blessed with the clients that I have worked with that I've had really amazing results with my clients. Over 80% of my clients seen dramatic results in their health. And a lot of them have shared with me that, if not literally, then figuratively, from the work that they did with me, many of them tell me that I saved their lives, which, I always accept that great compliment, but really it's about the effort that they've put in and the work that they've done as well. So, I'm always so excited to share their stories because I think I've worked with a lot of amazing people. But with that being said, I really like to say that let's get you eating well and feeling great and living amazingly, right? Because isn't that what we all want to do? So thanks for letting me introduce myself quickly here. So let's get started with the housekeeping out of the way. I always have to throw this out here, but all information contained herein is for educational purposes, and the information is not intended to replace medical care or diagnose or treat or prevent or mitigate or cure disease. As always, consult with your health professional before you attempt any self-health care program. This month's class is the Leaky Gut Solution. I see this all the time in my practice. It is almost an epidemic. And today's class, we're going to be taking a closer look at leaky gut. What is it, right? What are some of the causes? And what are some of the things that we can do about it? Leaky gut, I just can't even begin to tell you how often I see this. It is definitely a huge problem, and it leads to a lot of other problems downstream, and you'll see that today. The gut, or the gastrointestinal system, is truly a gateway to overall health. The gut microbiome is the ecosystem of organisms, including like bacteria, yeast, fungi, viruses, and protozoans. Throughout the digestive tract, far beyond just digestive health, the following organ systems are closely related to gut health. So I don't know if you're aware, but when we're first forming, we're literally a tube, and that tube is our digestive system. And all the organ systems come out of that tube. And that's why the gut has such an impact on overall health. But things like the immune system, the endocrine system, the nervous system, the circulatory system, the integumentary system, respiratory system, reproductive system, A few key points to consider. There are 10 times the amount of bacteria in our body than our own cells. And the majority of them are found within our digestive system. The gastrointestinal system contains 90% of the body's happy neurotransmitter, serotonin. The most importantly, approximately 70%, maybe even higher with new research coming out, of our body's immune system is housed in our gut. As you can tell, the gut health doesn't stop just at digestion. The health of our gut affects nearly every system in our body, and that's why it's so important to support that. Leaky gut. I don't know how many of you are actually familiar with that term. I think it's a little bit more familiar than what it used to be, but the term refers to intestinal hyperpermeability and has become increasingly more common health problems seen today. Leaky gut causes major, let me stress that, major health problems, including autoimmunity. How though? Intestinal hyperpermeability is exactly what it sounds like. The digestive tract is no longer able to ensure that the good things stay in it and that the bad things stay out of it. Instead, those tight junctions, because the cell wall is only one, well, the digestive tract is only one cell thick, and there's junctions. And what happens is those tight junctions, or the proteins that hold the intestinal walls together, they start to loosen, right? And when this happens, it leaves sizable gaps. And so then things like undigested food particles or digestive fluids or toxins can enter our bloodstream. So you can imagine what happens there. The body will react to these foreign particles in the bloodstream, producing immune antibodies. So now you're starting to develop antibodies or pro-inflammatory cells to fight them off. This breeds chronic inflammation and food allergies, various health complications. And most of us are really familiar that chronic inflammation is a huge problem in today's health society. Of course, there are no signs of improvement until that gut permeability is addressed. That's a piece I really like to look at, is addressing the gut first. Fortunately, we now have better understanding of the causes, the obstacles, and the methods to support the body healing leaky gut. So there is a stop to that cycle running over and over again. Several factors that prove to negatively affect the gut's integrity, right? Those junctions. The most prominent include the standard American diet, of course, right? Exposure to chemicals, chronic infections, gluten and other grains, food allergies, excessive medications, and poorly managed stress. Let's look at this as standard American diet, right? Rightfully known as, some of you know the terminology SAD, right? The SAD diet is one of the leading causes for chronic health issues that we see today. According to a 2009 study conducted by the USDA, 63% of the calories Americans are consuming came from processed foods containing preservatives, refined grains, added sugars, and oils. It's almost as though the general public took it upon themselves to reconfigure that food pyramid, right, that we all learned in school. And how they reconfigured it is that they put grain at the base, and then in the center was dairy, and then on the top was sugar, right? We see that so often. And honestly, none of these foods have any business being part of our diets at all. You can call it what you want, like fruit, frankenfoods, food-like substances, fake food, but you most definitely can't call most of our food supply real food. When the majority of our diets are packaged meals with a paragraph of like these huge paragraphs that we all see, right? Of all these ingredients on the labels, and you can't even understand it, no matter even begin to pronunciate what's actually on that food ingredient list. I mean, we are not eating real food. A couple of alarming facts that I want you all to be aware of is that the FDA has approved approximately 3,000 different food additives, preservatives, and colorings without adequate research on safety. The average person ingests, are you ready for this? 150 pounds 150 pounds of additives each year. The magnitude of these chemicals are allowed into our lives is incomprehensible. We are beginning more and more aware of these consequences of this fake food lifestyle, and it is simply unacceptable. This is only one factor in the leaky gut epidemic, but it is definitely a big one. At the end of the webinar, I have a surprise guest joining us, and I can't wait for you to meet him. Coming up next, though, we will discuss the other factors responsible for the onset and progression of leaky gut syndrome. Inflammation is a vital immune response, right? We need it when we need it. And it is the body's attempt to defend itself against pathogens or heal from an injury or repair damaged tissue. So inflammation, is really good for us in many ways, but where it becomes a problem is when we get to that chronic inflammation. However, it is not beneficial to our bodies in any way, right? That chronic inflammation. In fact, it can worsen the body's ability to recognize foreign invaders and puts the body in a state of stress for extended periods of time. This can cause lasting damage, increase food allergens, and even autoimmunity. Because if you remember on those few slides before where I talked about like stress is one of the problems that can actually cause intestinal hyperpermeability, right? So when we have chronic inflammation, that alone causes the body to have a huge amount of stress and can be super problematic. This type of inflammation can be caused by a number of things, but largely seen as a result of leaky gut syndrome and poor dietary habits. If chronic inflammation goes untreated, leaky gut will worsen, and the body ultimately loses its ability to repair from damage. And you just see that cycle over and over and over again. So let's look at gluten. I know everybody wants to blame gluten for everything, but I want you all to have a really good understanding of why gluten is such a problem. I think that we all need to look at this piece a little bit closer. But gluten is the general term for a mix of proteins that are found in many grains like wheat, barley, rye, those kind of grains. Gluten has found itself in much of our food supply. It's disguised in a lot of packaged foods. It's featured in most pre-made dishes that we get. It is no surprise that our consumption of gluten has increased, immensely. And our health is really suffering from it. Gluten allergies, sensitivities, intolerances are becoming increasingly more common. I see that so often with my own clients, right? And we know that gluten-free has become that buzzword that we hear in the health community all the time now. And people are finally really starting to begin to realize and explore how dangerous gluten really can be for their health. So how is it dangerous, right? What makes gluten such a problem? Gluten makes your gut leaky. Simple as that. The Zonulin, the protein found in gluten, increases permeability of the gut by furthering opening the spaces between the cells. So those tight junctions start to get more gaps when you consume gluten. The antibodies normally released as a result of leaky gut are accompanied by more antibodies created to attack one of gluten's more prominent building blocks, gliadin. This leads to more inflammation, more body confusion, and more health complications. In other words, the body reacts to the consumption of gluten by creating a defense mechanism to fight it. Once this damage has occurred within the digestive tract, it is then distributed throughout the whole entire body. So then you see that huge level of inflammation rise throughout that body. Aside from contributing, but not, if not entirely causing leaky gut, gluten increases inflammation, overall GI distress, and alters the balance of our microbiome. Our microbiome must be equipped with efficient, healthy bacteria in order to be successful on carrying out its necessary functions. Without proper balance of the bacteria or the microbiome in our GI tract, all these areas or functions in the body will get disrupted, like digestion, immune response, nutrient absorption, hormone regulation, vitamin production, detoxification, mood management, and so much more. Gluten produces both primary and secondary effects. The damage gluten causes that we'll talk about thus far has been mostly like the primary effects, those things like intestinal hyperpermeability or leaky gut, permeability. I don't know if you're aware of this, but permeability of the blood-brain barrier is a huge issue. The onset of autoimmune. So some of the autoimmune diseases that we think about when we think gluten, and there's so much more, there's like 600 autoimmune diseases out there, but things like celiacs, right? Or Crohn's or ulcer colitis, but they can all be impacted. For all 600 can be impacted by gluten as a regular part of one's diet. But also the development of psychological disorders. I mean, I want to stop here for a second. I remember doing some research some time ago, and schizophrenia can actually be tied to gluten consumption. And there's such great research of showing by taking out gluten in one's diet of how to really be able to manage schizophrenia, which I found that totally fascinating. Dysbiosis, which means abnormal bacteria growth, like an overgrowth of bacteria that doesn't really serve us, not the good microbiome, but what we usually refer to as like the bad microbiome. But acute allergic or IgE responses and delayed antibody responses are a lot of things that we see. While all of these issues are very serious within themselves too, but can cause further complications. So coming up next, we'll kind of look at the secondary effects of gluten. The secondary effects of gluten exposure include severe nutrient deficiencies, such as iron and vitamin B12, systemic inflammation that can lead to organ or tissue breakdown. It may seem a bit redundant that we keep coming back to how our body acts on gluten, but one of the most important pieces of information that you can take away from this class is really understanding how gluten, doesn't really support us in the way that we would like for it to. Gluten is a major component of the leaky gut cycle. It is present in the onset, the maintenance, and the progression of this damaging condition and should not be taken lightly. As you can probably guess, gluten's path to disease is pretty direct. The first step is when gluten contribution goes unnoticed. At this point, It's likely that there's little to no known symptoms. This is where most people will assume that gluten won't hurt them and therefore they can eat it with no problem. Unfortunately, the lack of apparent symptoms does not mean that gluten doesn't hurt your gut. In fact, it takes exposure over time when the accumulation of damage before leaky gut is noticeable. For those cutting out gluten before they feel any physical discomfort, they are still treating the underlying issues, even if they can't quite feel, well yet. The second step in the progression is subclinical problems. This is where leaky gut truly begins to develop. Often the first things that will be noticed is like an increase of food or environmental allergens. What I'll see with a lot of my own clients is like all of a sudden, like their seasonal allergens start to really rise a lot. And they're like, wow, I used to have, like some hay fever, but now I have like a ton, like, spring and fall are killing me. That can be a sign that there's something going on in that digestive system. But digestive distress maybe, start to begin as well and become more frequent. Unfortunately, it is common for people to still avoid blaming gluten for their discomfort. The last step is recognizing the problem. However, it is not usually recognized gluten as a problem, but a knowledge at the problem that gluten has caused, right? So for an example, if someone is diagnosed with chronic disease or develops some kind of inflammatory changes, most medical doctors will begin to treat the condition rather than actually examine and look for the origin of that problem. So just like when I shared before about season allergies, like maybe you'll end up getting a prescription for some kind of antihistamine, but maybe the problem really is what you're eating. It's a shame that this happens so often. If gluten was just recognized as the main problem in the earlier stages, then a lot of these health issues could just be totally avoided, which I think all of us would really love, right? Gluten, however, is not the only concern when it comes to solving leaky gut. We will be going over some other issues that contribute to this dangerous syndrome as well. Much of the additives and preservatives flooding our food supply, like pesticides, are also a big part of what's on our plate. There are 3 million tons of pesticides used worldwide each year, and more than 16,000 chemicals involved in the production of these pesticides. Studies to ensure their safeties on humans have been very limited, whereas some have no documentation research at all. And I want you to be aware that the ones that have been researched, a lot of times it's only with one chemical. It's not when we combo chemicals together. So when we put chemical A, B, and C, there's no health studies at all. There may be health studies on A and B and C. We see that a lot. I think it's, threw this out one time when I was doing a webinar, but like the average cucumber has something like 66 chemicals on it. I mean, that's unbelievable to me. While we're not entirely sure of their safety on human health, right? Just even looking at just that one piece, pesticides, we do recognize a strong link between pesticide exposure and having these issues, things like nervous system disorders, immune system suppression, reproductive damage, hormone imbalances, thyroid issues, type 2 diabetes, obesity, asthma, migraine headaches, attention disorders, development delay in children, the magnitude of pesticides, also along with like steroids and hormones and antibiotics and excitotoxins, show up in our food supply is truly frightening. And to think that it's the main component of leaky gut trend is, it's simply impossible it just blows my mind on how much we really need to focus on real food, as clean as we can get. Let's talk a little bit about medications. Medication is severely overprescribed in the current medical model used today. Medical programs train doctors to medicate symptoms, even when they are unsure of the cause. This in short term has seemed to work because, patients start to experience temporary relief from their discomfort. But what isn't taken into account is how these excessive prescriptions have affected our bodies. So let me give you a few examples. So one example is like statins. Statins, drug used to lower cholesterol, but it has also been shown to lower vitamin D and CoQ10 levels. While it may be lowering cholesterol, it is simultaneously causing nutrient deficiencies and muscle fatigue and increased blood pressure and weakened immunity. Let's take a look at painkillers, things like ibuprofen, naproxen, aspirin, contribute to vitamin C and iron deficiencies, leaving one vulnerable to disease and eroding the mucosal lining of the stomach. Acid reduction medications hinder the digestion of protein, calcium, vitamin B12, and often cause chronic pain problems. Long-term use of antidepressants too significantly impact the gut's mobility and cause digestive issues. Lastly, it's important to note that almost all medications are unable to sort between the good bacteria in our gut and the illness it's trying to attack. The results in altered microbiome and much greater risk for infections. So as you can tell, drugs offer a lot of unintended consequences and can affect our health very badly. There are a few situations where drugs should be your solution, of course, right? Such as like a life-threatening infection or a surgical situation. Without immediate emergency need for medication, it is best to treat the issue rather than the temporary patch of the problem. Now, I want to make sure that everybody understands, like, I'm not suggesting that you stop your medications that you're currently on, but to give you an understanding of the issues that they may be causing. This is where working with someone in holistic nutrition and your doctor as a team, can put you on a plan to help actually address like your root cause issues. The gut has 5 critical elements or defenses, and it is truly the needs for healthy gut function. In order for the outermost layers of defense include, so let's look at the first layer. The first layer is the mucosal IgA, otherwise known as immunoglobulin A. This antibody found in the mucosal membranes is considered our gut's first line of defense against toxins. Then we'll take a look at those tight junctions, right? That's what happens with leaky gut, loosens up those tight junctions. These are small proteins that are responsible for holding the gut cell together. This is what most directly is affected by leaky gut syndrome. And then we have the gastro-associated lymphoid tissue, which is also known as GALT. This is the gut's concentrated immune system. In fact, 70% or maybe even more of our immune system altogether. This is the gut's last and most powerful layer of defense. Now, the gut has some accessory defenses also. One is friendly bacteria, like, as we mentioned, we have more bacteria in our bodies than we do our own cells. This bacteria can communicate with the gut, right? So it can warn it of like potential danger that we may be under. Stomach acid. This is absolutely essential for digestion, absorption of nutrients, and defense against infections. If there's any dysfunction throughout your gut lining of defense, these 5 primary barriers need to be evaluated in order to correct the dysfunction and protect our health. The first step of healing is ruling out the fundamental causes of leaky gut. This is important to recognize what it is, and very rarely only one cause, but a combination of several different things that are causing damage. You must first rule out or begin to recognize the following, right? Vitamin deficiencies. You can do that by nutrient assessment. Intestinal microbial overgrowth can be tested by urine testing. Delayed food allergens with IgG testing. Disbalances of organ systems can be seen in a blood chemistry analysis. If any of these come back positive, you have your first step of instructions, right? Address the deficiencies, implement the dietary changes, limit exposure to allergens, and consider detoxification methods. Once you have a better understanding of your body's unique needs, you can begin a formal functional nutrition protocol, which we refer to as the 4 R's. The 4R program is administered to help support the body in digestive distress, reverse gut complications, rebalance your gastrointestinal microbiome, and it is an incredible tool to acknowledge and correct health issues, dysfunctions, imbalances, personal health needs. And it's done in the following order. So the first thing is to remove, to eliminate the problem foods, right? Eliminate the toxins, intestinal microbial overgrowth, and oxidative stress. So those are that's the first step, take those out. The second step is to repair, begin reintroducing a clean diet with essential nutrients for your body's needs. And then the third step is restore. So you're going to want to repopulate your gut with healthy bacteria to restore and proper balance of that gut flora, because that's so important, having really good microbiome. And then the fourth step is replace. And you're going to replace things that need to be replaced, right? Like digestive enzymes, antioxidant, immune boosting vitamins to promote sustainability and healthy digestion. We as functional nutritional practitioners are trained in this protocol and enthusiastic about making sure that your individual needs are addressed during that process. I really love the individual need piece. I think it really helps support people a lot when they know what they need. So it's not that one size fits all. At this point, you may have already removed things that you already know that are detrimental to your health, such as gluten or known allergies. But you may also want to remove as much chemical burden from your daily life as you can. These include things like, pesticides on your food, genetically modified organisms, unnecessary medications, unnatural household cleaners. And when we go to Q&A, I want to talk a little bit about this piece a little bit more, because I'm starting to notice a few trends with a couple of my clients, and I want to make all of you aware of that. And we'll just talk about that in the Q&A. Once you have an understanding of what should be removed from your daily life, you can begin to implement those changes. It's time to begin repairing the damage that has previously been done. This is done by just like, let's calm down all that chronic inflammation and then reintroduce like nutrient dense foods, digestive enzymes, probiotics, essential fiber, vitamins, minerals, and acids. So important. Some people, these steps may mean implementing, like to take it a little bit further. They may start doing like intermittent fasting, supplementation, or like personalized diet plans to cater to their specific health needs. Again, but make sure to consult with your functional nutritional practitioner to make sure that you're beginning the most appropriate repair route for your needs. Nutrients can be replaced for effective healing. While everyone's needs are, highly individualized, I wanted to give you all some common supplements that have been proven to be helpful with gut healing process. So things that like I like to think about are like probiotics, prebiotics, digestive enzymes, fiber, collagen can be a big piece, turmeric, great for lowering inflammation, L-glutamine, and quercetin. Those are really great powerhouses when it comes to thinking about gut health. Now, these are only suggestions, right? We're unable to suggest these supplements to you without comprehensive testing, and everyone's nutritional needs may vary, but those are the ones that I like to really think about when I'm thinking about gut repair, and we'll just leave it at that. However, the main takeaway from this is that you should not rely like totally on supplements, right? Because we just want to use them to help us heal. So we don't want to be, we don't want to have to crutch on them forever. But the goal is to be able to, sustain that wellness through whole foods and healthy lifestyle choices long term, without having to take a pile of supplements. But definitely use them at the beginning for the healing state for sure. Let's talk about what is the, what's the most challenging part of health, right? Is just maintaining it. Even when you build a strong foundation during the healing process, without the proper diet, lifestyle choices, and stress management long term, you'll fall right back into that same gut destroying patterns. And I just want everyone to really, this always resonates with me, and I want it to really resonate with you, is to remember that health is a journey. It's not really a destination. Although there are plenty of research on the dangers of leaky gut, it's still considered a medical mystery. Many people struggle for years before they come across a functional practitioner familiar with leaky gut syndrome and how to support the body in a way to correct it for them. Always start with the fundamentals, right? Honor your body's unique needs and skip the guesswork. I want to thank you all for taking your time to experience this class today. I love sharing this topic with people that are so eager to transform their health, and this group's been awesome. Thank you, everyone. If you have any further questions, please hold them until I open up the Q&A. But please remember that we're always here to support you in any way that we can. If you are interested in learning more about what we do to transform energy levels and brain fog and GI distress with our clients, feel free to just reach out. You can book a no-fee health strategy session from our website. It's Early Bird Wellness, and that's BYRD. I'd love to hear about what's going on with you and be able to support you in any way that I can. And then I want everyone to stay tuned for more of our Gifting Back to Our Community Health Education series. Be on the lookout for email invites. What's coming up in October? We have an email series going out in October for optimizing sleep because I hear the sleep piece a lot. So I thought that might be beneficial. And then our next webinar masterclass is going to be October the 20th at 12 noon. And the focus will be on brain health for that class. Thank you again for joining today. Health and happiness, everyone. And let's open it up to Q&A and comments. So all you need to do is unmute yourself. And I did say that I was going to bring on a special guest today to show you all. So I know Maggie has seen this before, my special guest, but when I was in school, I just feel like this just so resonates with today's topic, right? When we started talking about fraud and frankenfood and fake food, whatever you want to call it, right? So when I was in school getting trained, one of our assignments was to buy a fast food item, right? And so I went to a particular store to buy a fast food item. And actually I looked at it, and today it's about 5 years old. Right about that. And so this is just to prove of the point about frankenfood, right? And this is really how we get into leaky gut. So here's my cheeseburger that is 5 years old, that has not been refrigerated, that has been sitting out on a shelf for 5 years. And you can see, like, you can hear, like, the bun is hard, right? But it's not moldy. Right? Like, how can that be? Here's the burger. You can see the burger. You can see the cheese. The cheese isn't moldy. The burger doesn't smell like anything. I mean, it's definitely shrunk, of course, over time, but how can that be? Right? I mean, this is not real food. There is no way that I could leave a hamburger with cheese on it in a bun, sit out unrefrigerated for 5 years and it not have, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So just to share with everybody, I mean, that, this is a daily diet item for many people in America right here, or even our kids, right? We're busy. We don't, we're running between soccer games and, dance and all these things. And it's just easy to drive through the drive-through. And I want everybody to really be aware that this is not food. Anyway, that's my special guest. Any comments or thoughts or today?
I just want to say, Allison, you know that I was one of those that had a pretty hefty case of leaky gut, and it took me, with your expertise, some time to get rid of it. And what a drastic difference. So you healed me.
It's so, I think too, I think that we're going to see a lot more leaky gut, especially after the last 18 months of our lives, right? Because I feel like so many people's stress levels have been so insanely high, that alone can really damage the gut lining. And I think we're going to see a huge influx of that as well, and it does put us at risk for, possibly developing an autoimmune disease. Most autoimmune diseases really start in the GI tract when we open up those junctions and allow all that, those chemicals and toxins and all those other things to get into the body, infections and things that, aren't necessarily shouldn't be there. And plus that, I always feel like one of the big pieces about leaky gut is that it wastes our immune system. Now the immune system's running around after all these things that are getting into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And I want my immune system to be taking care of things that are much more critical. You know, I don't want to waste it. So by making sure that you have really good structure in your GI, that your cell structure is really strong in that GI tract, you can really fine tune that immune system to really be there to support you in the way that it should be. Because the immune system can only do so much in a day, you know? And so it's like, I'm always stressing that with clients, like, let's not waste our immune system. Anyone else today on any thoughts or, you know, and I know, like, I want to address the gluten piece a little bit more because I really feel like, you know, everything always gets blamed on gluten and people are just like, I don't understand, you know, I've had bread since I was a kid. But really, you know, I don't know if anybody in here, has anybody in here ever read the Wheat Belly book?
No.
No. So in the Wheat Belly book, there was some really, what has really happened is that we have taken wheat and we have modified it in such a way that now the wheat has all this extra protein in it than what it did if you looked at like an ancient grain. And our bodies just have not evolved enough to be able to digest that protein. And I found that very fascinating because wheat used to be something like 8 feet tall and it was smaller. Now it's really short and squatty, with the kernels being a lot larger. You know, so all this modification has happened with that food. And so that's one of the reasons why we have such a hard time with digestion of it. And then I also have some other thoughts on that as well. And one of the things is that grains, right? Like let's use wheat. Wheat, I don't know if you all are familiar with this, but wheat is actually sprayed with Roundup. So to make it die off faster for quicker harvest, they spray the crop with Roundup. So even though it's not a Roundup ready crop, right? It's not a GMO necessarily, but they'll use it in harvesting. And so part of me always goes back and is like between the extra proteins, right? And then between all the Roundup being used on that crop, is that why it's such a problem? Right? And then the other ones that we see a lot of issues with as well are other crops, or that I've put correlation to, are other crops that I see that we use a lot of Roundup on. You know, they do the same thing with soybeans, right? They spray, you know, they can spray things for harvest. So we see a lot of it being used for harvest, just to harvest quickly, besides just being GMO, where they can spray the whole crop and it won't die at all, but it does absorb it, right? And it brings, because we know, like, think about when it rains, right? The plant absorbs it and brings it up into itself. The same thing is true with the chemical use. You know, and I think that might be also why, like, when you hear people say, like, when they are on vacation in Europe, they seem to do better with the grains there than they would do with the grains here. And I think that I think there's like, that's kind of a twofold thing for me. I think one is that they don't process their grains the same way that we do here stateside. And also they're on vacation, so they're less stressed, right? But if you've never tried to go gluten-free, you know, I always recommend people like try it for like 2 weeks and just see how you feel. If it's really inflammatory for you, what I see as inflammation is weight gain. And when people take out the foods that inflame them, the first thing that I start to notice is that they lose weight, because it's not so much weight as it is that chronic inflammation in the cells. And I'll usually see a large change there. I'm not a big component of the gluten-free items. A lot of it's just garbage. A lot of simple carbohydrates, spike the blood sugar, not good. Anyone else?
Are we allowed to ask questions now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of my main questions, as far as this topic would be, when you decide to choose a probiotic to start with, to kind of start the healing process, how many units would you personally recommend and for how long on average?
Oh, you could
That's really the hardest thing I have to, when you go to the store and you're looking at all the probiotics, my mind just goes crazy as far as, oh my gosh, how many billion units of good bacteria should I put in my body? Is it going to be too harsh? Because I suffer from a lot of intestinal issues. My father has leaky gut. He has IBS. He has Crohn's. And I have a lot of what he goes through. I was just never actually diagnosed with it. So I'm really trying to do that so I don't actually have to go through all of the BS that he goes through with his doctors, all those meds, things like that. So I feel like the probiotic kind of has to be really important as far as choosing which unit to buy.
It is, but at the same time, like all the strains do something a little bit different. So it's kind of good to know what you need. So what I would suggest, if you feel like you have any kind of sensitivity, I'll just kind of put this out there the best that I can. I might just start with food first. I might start with fermented foods. Like start with like doing a little bit of sauerkraut. Like you can go to the store, look in the refrigerated section. It can't be heat processed because you want that raw. Do not do kombucha. That's made with a lot of sugar. I don't agree with that. But like, sauerkraut or anything like that, I would start there first and see how you do. And then you can bring in, I'm not a real big fan of using, I use probiotics, but I've kind of gotten where I'm kind of starting to lean more on the spore-based probiotics now. And the reason why is because I'm finding that many of my clients have small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And if you put them on a probiotic, they will feel horrible, really horrible, but they can tolerate a spore base. So I'm starting to lean more towards the spore base, and I don't think that would be something that you could like pick up at Walgreens or CVS. I do like a lot of the actual refrigerated probiotics, which some of my clients are on, but you kind of want to change things as time goes by. And it really depends. Like if someone's had, I wish I could give you a better answer. It really doesn't matter where you start, like just start anywhere, right? Because anywhere is an improvement. But like, it depends. Like if one of my clients has had like a lot of antibiotic use, right? Like a lot. Like I've got ones that say they've had a lot. They've had so many, they can't even tell me how many antibiotics they've been on. So I might put them on, or it depends on what they've got going on, right? Like someone like your dad, I would almost go with a prescription strength probiotic and see if I could totally repopulate very quickly, depending on what was going on, or someone had Crohn's or ulcer colitis or something like that, but anywhere you start, you'll be okay. I mean, it's better than doing nothing. But you remember, you've got to feed those guys. That's where that prebiotic comes in. And sometimes you'll see some probiotics have prebiotics in them as well.
Right.
But just look for anything, like if you're looking at a probiotic or any supplement, like look at those others. If you see a lot of garbage in there, that's exactly what it is, garbage, right? So like if you look at it closely and you're like, what is all this other stuff? Right. And it has a lot of other things listed, then, I would look at a different brand.
So do you think that focusing on the more strains of bacteria is more important than the units?
Yes.
So a probiotic that offers like 13 strains versus a probiotic that offers 7 strains.
I think
that 13 strain would be a better choice.
I like more strains.
Okay.
I like more strains because you're getting more diversification. than just, but then if you're someone who like really suffers with GI issues, yourself, then, looking at the BIFAs would be, like when you're looking at the back, like that would be more supportive for the GI tract. So it just really depends. I hate to say it really depends, but even just starting with food, the body recognizes food the best. But if you feel like, because I just don't know how imbalanced your GI tract is. That's why I kind of like to start with food, because you can kind of control it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
It was
you
completely
could start
balanced
off with
for
like a
years.
tablespoon, huh?
It was completely balanced for years, and then I went through a really bad breakup right before the coronavirus hit, and then all of 2020 was just completely messed up. I mean, I was gluten free, I was dairy free, no cruciferous vegetables. I thought I was at my best, and then all this bullshit started, and then all my kids were in virtual learning, and they all failed, and it was just terrible. So I'm really trying to, now that there's a little bit of normalcy back, I'm trying to get myself back. I mean, I've gained almost 40 pounds in 1 year. And I know it's because of my gut. I know it.
Yep.
So
I would
that's why
agree.
I'm just trying to like jumpstart and kick it. And then
I would start with whole foods first and see how you do. Because sometimes when you jump into like a lot of strains or any of that, like you can really upset your GI tract, right? Because things are dying off now in order to make space for that. So, it can make you not feel good. So you might notice things like having some stomach cramping or loose stool or things like that. And to keep that from happening, you would need to go slower. So if you feel like there's a lot going on, then I would just go ahead and start with foods first, because that way you could start with like a tablespoon of sauerkraut and work up to 2 tablespoons, or, and then switch over. Because the body's going to recognize food first, right? Always. It's the easiest way to make that transition. And then you may be one that, would do better with, a spore-based probiotic instead. What I would suggest is, if you have time, like I don't know what your schedule is, but to just go ahead and book that no-fee health strategy session with me, and share with me about what's going on with you. And I might be able to help you a little bit more with some like personal direction.
oh, I definitely plan on doing that.
Right. So, but yeah, it's just hard to say. I mean, wherever you start would be fine, but if something makes you really upset, like it feels like it's not better, it's just because it's a little bit too much at one time for you, and you just need to go a little bit slower.
Okay.
And you can open up capsules as well. Like you don't have to do a whole capsule, right? You can open up a capsule and do half a capsule, mix it in some unsweetened applesauce, or throw it in a smoothie. Anything like that. It's sometimes there's like a mixed review about when to take probiotics to, like, one rule of thumb is make sure you're taking it with food. And then sometimes I like to do mine at nighttime, because probiotics help support the immune system, and the immune system is active when we're sleeping. So there's like 2 rules of thumb, but if you do it at nighttime, at bedtime, and you feel good, great. If you do it at bedtime and your stomach is empty and it's a little bit too much for you, then, switch it to with a meal.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, well, we're going to wrap it up for today. I'm going to be getting that optimal sleep piece done so I can send that out to everybody. This email invite, so look for that later on this week. Thanks for joining this month's webinar, and I look forward to seeing everybody next month. So take care, everybody, and have an amazing day.